Forget about it more. I know it.
You guys ready? Survived the rain last night? Yeah.
I loved it. Slept like a boss.
Kid woke up crying at 5 in the morning because the window was slightly open.
How dare you?
Go back to sleep. Please, 4. He went back to sleep and then I stayed up. I didn't mean to. I'm going to go back to sleep. This isn't fair. But I'm good now. All after our class. My next class in. Anyone have any questions before we get going? We're good? So, right, last class we started introducing class syntax, right? Once again, classes, we kind of like went through an idea that they have attributes and behaviors, right? And we learned the attributes are kind of like variables and the behaviors are like functions. So we really talked about functions last class. But there wasn't much we could do with those functions, right? They did little things like output, but they didn't do much. So today is when they get a little bit more interesting, where we can start giving functions input, we're going to start getting data out of functions, and this is where they really become useful to us. All right, so I'm going to kind of review our class syntax. Right, it gets a little bit crazy because now we're writing something above main, and then we're writing some stuff below main, and then we're writing stuff in main, and sometimes it's hard to figure out how those three things kind of all line up together. So we'll kind of review that at the beginning of every class, just so we know kind of what's going on. So let's start with the code that we put above main. Right, so here's our, well, that's terrible.
Wait.
Like a mean trick that had a teacher on me, right? Let's just leave all of that. Right? So we have stuff that we put above main. And what do we put above main?
Oh, like IOStream,
Okay, good.
using
And after
CDs.
that, what? The class, right? We start declaring what our class looks like. Remember, class is a blueprint, right? So we're going to declare what the class looks like. Today, we're going to work on a class that is a class that is a blueprint for a day of the year. So if we think about the attributes of a day of the year, right? What are the attributes? Good. Let's just leave all of that. Next class in. Anything else?
Day.
And day. We're not trying to overcomplicate things, right? Every day of the year has a month associated with it and a what? And a day associated with it. Everyone good with that? What, right? We talked about that these are the attributes of our object, right? And the class is going to be the blueprint for that, right? We have to define, in C++, we have to define data types for these attributes, right? So what possible data types do you think a month could be?
Integer.
Char. Anything else?
Integer.
Integer. Anything else?
Maybe a string.
Maybe a string. Okay. What about a day?
Integer.
Integer.
That's it.
Anything else?
Yeah, I can do a string.
Could be a string. Pretty much everything could be a string. So when we make our blueprints, we kind of have to decide, right, what are our attributes going to be, right? Because the data type limits what it can be in, right? So we kind of have to decide what it wants to be. You'll see today, we'll just pick N, right? N's easy. I don't have to write as much, so that's all we're going to pick. And what we'll see is that if we want our month to be translated to a string, right, we have the ability to do that. Just like in our lab last week, right, we translated like 11, 12, 13 integers into, right, Jack, Queen, King. Right? So we have that ability to do that. So if we pick ints are numbers are easy to do things with, and then we can translate them better. Does that make sense a little bit? Everyone kind of good there? Right, so when I write a class, the word that I use is?
Class.
Class, there goes my pen. Class, right? Then after that comes the name that I want my class to be, right? Remember, this is a user-defined type, right? This is what I want it to be. In this case, right, it's representing a what?
Day of the year.
Day of the year, so I'm going to call it?
Day of the year.
Day of the year, right? So capital D, this is my style, day of year. Everyone good there? Right, and then after that comes an opening curly, right, and after that comes a what?
Public.
All right, public, and I'm going to just, so I don't forget, I'm going to slap on my closing curly and my semicolons all the way on the bottom, right? I'll move it up if I have to. Right? Yes, and then this word that we're going to figure out today what it means, that's why you're here today, right?
Public.
That public word. Right? After that, I can define my attributes and I can define my behaviors. Make sense a little bit?
Is there any case where there'll be stuff before public?
Possibly not in this class because style-wise we won't do that, but yeah, we'll see a lot of stuff.
Just good to know.
Right? And so we need to define maybe some behaviors, right? And then maybe some attributes. It's kind of weird by convention, we always put our behaviors first, and you'll kind of see today why that is. But usually, before I define my behaviors, I really need to define what my attributes are. Right? My two attributes are what?
Month and day.
Month and day, and they are of type what?
Integer.
Integers, right? So all I have to say is int, right, month, and then what?
Int. Day.
What else do I need here then?
Oh, semicolon.
And remember, by style, we're going to put an underscore at the end. This underscore today is going to become really important. All right, because we're going to have month like in 3 different places. One's going to have parentheses, one's going to have an underscore, and one's not. Depending on what they are, they mean different things. So we're really going to get used to this underscore today. So we have month, and then we have what?
Day.
And
Underscore. Wait, do you not capitalize those underscored ones?
No.
On purpose, you're not capitalizing them?
Because they're really variables, and our variables are never capitalized. So we don't capitalize.
Got it.
And then, right, we're going to add more behaviors, but let's just do one behavior, right? Right now, our behaviors are pretty boring. They always start with void, right? And then I'm just going to call this output, right? Behaviors are functions, so at the end of them, what do they always have?
Parentheses and a semicolon.
Right? And basically what we're saying is a day of the year is made up of a month and a day, right? Those are the attributes. And it has one behavior right now, and that is that it can output itself. Right? Because a month and a day, maybe it's going to be outputted as, January. Right? And so in that output function, I can make it be January as opposed to 1. I'm not going to make it do that because I'm not going to have room to do that. But I will show you that code. Make sense so far? Everyone good with that? So the first thing we have to do when we're working with objects is to create a class, right? What does my object look like? Okay. Now, if my object has any behaviors, the second step is to write what those behaviors do. Once again, this is everything before I ever get into main and use the objects, right? And so I write this above main, and then I have this other section, which is where? Below main, right? And below main, I define what the behavior does, right? I need to say, what does output mean for every single object of type day of year, right? This is the only time where I recommend you do what? Copy and paste, right? So I'm going to copy and paste this output, right? So it's going to end up being not in purple, in black. It's going to be void, right? Class name, which is day of year.
Then you do semicolon something somewhere.
Yeah, we'll go through those steps. I can't copy and paste with the whiteboard, so I'm just going to write it out. Day of year, colon, output, right? Paren, and then a curly. And then don't forget, right, always, right? Whenever you have an opening curly, always write your closing curly. Structures only have attributes, and then classes have both. Yeah. Otherwise, they're the same. Okay. So I took this behavior, void output, I copied it over, I put class name, colon before function name, but I changed the semicolon to what?
Curly.
Right. I will today, I promise I will talk about coded assignment 3A, which is literally just that. If you can copy and paste and change, right, semicolons to curlies, you're going to do really good. Okay. Your lab today is harder than your coding assignment.
We did that in our lab last week.
Right. So just know that. I know the last code assignment was hard, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not going to tell you about this code assignment until it's due. All right. It's easier than the lab for doing this. All right, so that's
Really?
The next one will get a little bit more complicated, but not too complicated. Are we good so far? Right now, this behavior is to do what?
Output.
Output, right? Output a day of year, which is made up of a month and a day, right? So probably in this output function, what am I going to output? Month and day. Remember, output is part of day of year, which means it has access to all the members of the class, right? I have two members here, month and day, that I have access to. I don't have to recreate those variables, right? I have access to them, right? So in here, I can just as easily say C out, right? Month probably comes first, right? And then maybe, right, a slash, right? Basically, I get to make up what does a day of the year look like when I output it. What does it look like? Right, and there's my day. And then I guess, just for the heck of it, why anymore? Right? Probably you would have written that all on one line, but I want some more space to do some stuff with it. Make sense though? Right? Do I currently know the value of month and day?
No.
No, right? That will happen when I create an object. When I create an object, it will get a month and a day. And when I call the output function, it will use that month and that day's value. Right? So remember, this is a blueprint, right? So I don't really know what these are. I just know that they probably are what? Or they have to be integers.
Whole numbers.
Right? Whole numbers. That's all I need. That's fine, right? If this was 1 and that was 5, right, it would output 1/5. Make sense a little bit? Right? That's me defining, right, my behavior, right? Now I've declared my class, I've defined the functions, the behaviors of the class. So now what can I finally do?
Create an object and
create an object, right? How many objects can I create?
As many as you want.
As many as I want, right? So that's something we have to keep in mind, because pretty much everything that I'm going to do, I'm always going to create like one object. If you're just going to create one object, the work of doing all this is not really worth it. Does that make sense? Right? The beauty comes when I create 2 objects, or 5 objects, or 10 objects. Right? Because now I can create lots of them and wrap up all the behaviors and attributes together. Right? So now I'm not above main or below main, but where am I now?
Inside it.
In main. I've made it all the way to main. Cool? We're good there? All right. So main is int main, right? Because it's a what? We now know it's a function.
Yeah.
Right? So there's main. Right? In main, I can now use my new type. Right? Day of year is a type. Right? I keep saying this, but I'm trying to hammer that home, right? It's a new type, just like int, double, char, string, bool, day of year. Right? We have all. Right? So in main, I can say, right, day of year. Right? That's the type. What comes after a type? Not yet, the name of it, right? The name of my outfit. So day of year, and then we'll just go with today, right? Which in essence, right, creates me an object called today, right? Whose type is
Day of year.
Day of year, right? That has a month underscore and a day underscore. Right? It has those two things, and it has right now one behavior, right? Void output. Everyone good there so far?
Yeah.
Right? The values of month and day are
We don't know yet.
garbage, right? We don't know. So we call them garbage, right? How do I give these here? We use the
dot.
right?
Dot.
So we say today, which is the name of my object, right? Dot, right? And then the name of my attribute, right? So we could say month underscore, right? And the month is what? Right?
3, sure.
Because it's typical, it's today. Right?
Sure, what is today?
As far as I know,
That's fair.
right? What?
Yeah.
Unless we get a compiler, you know, right?
That's
So
like
it's 3 right
70
there. Good
pages
catch.
long.
Right?
It's gonna be like,
Go to this object, access this attribute, and assign it that value, right? That's what it's saying. Go to this object, right? Access this attribute and assign it this value, right? So we can say, once again, go to this object, right? Dot access this attribute, day underscore, and give it what value?
13.
Thank you. I don't really know what today is. Good so far? Right? Now I have a couple of choices, right? Let's say I want to see today's date, right, as output. What would be the best choice?
To call output.
To call the output function, because it's already doing all the work, right?
Yeah.
I could see out today.month and a slash and today.day and a new line, right? I want to agree, I could do that.
But you already did all the work.
But I already did
lined
all
it
the
all
work.
up.
Right? So all I have to say is today, right, go to this object, right, access this behavior, which is called output, right? Open, close parent, don't forget those, and a semicolon. Void functions are like commands. We just say, go do this, right? Today we're gonna learn other functions besides void functions, so they're not always commands, but void functions are commands. Go and do this, right? So this says, go to the output function and use whose values? Today's values, right? So we're gonna go here, right, to output, and we're gonna see out month. Whose month are we gonna output?
Today's.
Today's, because I called output on today. Everyone good with how those values fill in? Those values fill in because I called it on a particular object. Right, so what's gonna output?
3.
A 3, right? So I'm gonna get a 3 for output. Right? Then I'm gonna output a what?
Slash.
A slash.
Forward slash.
Right, it's a forward slash. It's going forward, right? It's like you tripped, right? Forward slash is always trip. Right? Day underscore. What's day underscore's value?
13.
13, right? Because we're acting on today's values, right? So then I get my 13, and then I get a what?
And next line.
Next line, right? Which is the next thing that output will be on.
so last time we used set, what was the difference output of the set?
So you can name your functions whatever you want. Usually like a set function is for input, right? Set got the values from my card, and then we also wrote an output function which was wrapped up. So today we're gonna add, right? This is just my output function. We're gonna add an input function. And we're gonna add a couple other functions.
So is set just like a conventional naming for?
Yeah, you'll see today we're gonna create a function called set underscore month or set underscore day, right?
And this would be good if you were looking to also say like rent day is the 5th. You could make an object of rent day and then change the values there, and then you could still use rent day dot output.
For everything.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap all this up. Basically, the goal is that in main, we're just gonna say do these things, and the behaviors will do those things, right? So we won't have to write all this kind of code or even this assignment code necessarily in main.
So if
We're
we
gonna write them in their own behaviors and just call it behaviors. That's the goal. That's what we're gonna get.
if we wanted to put our last 2 games we did for our assignments, we could put those into functions and then call them.
Yeah.
And then it'll just run whatever one the player wants to choose.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. Questions so far? Are we good there? All right. This will be here for you to take a picture of later, I guess, if you want. All right. But you also have a lot of code that looks like this today. Questions? We good there?
Sleep on me, we're just getting started.
All right.
That was funny, you know it.
All
Yeah.
Before I get into my lecture, I just want to take a minute and talk about two things. There's two announcements on Canvas right now. One's for the advisory party, which is tomorrow.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Tomorrow.
I signed up.
So that's tomorrow. All right, so this is your reminder that that's tomorrow from 4 to 6. All right, I will be there till 5, so you probably better not show up till 5. Right? No, show up at 4. Eat all the food, or it'll be gone. The other thing is we're into this right now. We're trying to figure out if we get tutors in CAS, and we're trying to figure out if people would utilize that.
Like Kenneth.
So we're
Oh.
he's not a tutor. So if you could, if you're not logged into Canvas, if you could log into Canvas, click on tutoring interest, and there's a link. Right, and it's like 5 questions. You can just fill those questions. We'll take like 4 minutes to do it. Right? If you say no, you're not interested, then just hit submit and you're done. But if you're not interested, I would still like you to go there and say no. We're trying to figure out how many people would be interested in using tutoring if it was available. What location would it be better to be on main campus or Chico Center? What day or times?
Is this like to compensate for your like 15-minute class hours or office hours that you have?
Work for my office hours, right? You're always going to come to my office hours, but I'm not always here, right? Like this semester, I'm only here Tuesdays and Thursdays, so sometimes it's hard to get to. So take 4 minutes, fill that out. At the bottom, if you're interested in being a tutor, right, then you can put in your name and your email and say, I'm interested in being a tutor. Yes, everyone's tutor. It is worth 0 points.
Oh boy.
Okay. So there's no stick, but I would like you to fill it out. All right, so just take a couple minutes. And then we'll get into actually making some more behaviors for our day.
Oh my God, Chris.
Why not?
8 to 7.
These kids to learn.
Or is that what you want to do, or is that what you want others to do?
I
Chris?
already know these ones. I want access. I'm going to take all these classes. I want
Linux
access.
1.
Yeah, no.
There's a lot of computer science classes.
Microsoft Database Administration. Advanced Windows 2012 servers.
Yeah, we have all those classes.
No. Cisco networking may be something I don't want.
CSCI 4.
Just one.
What is this? 20?
Chris does my hair at gmail.com.
I have my hairstyle. Did you not know that?
I assumed that's what you did, but I wasn't sure. Just didn't want to jump the gun on that one.
I'll give you 1 more minute. No pressure. 1 more minute. Right. You guys are getting pretty lucky.
Takes too much energy.
That's my Instagram.
What the? Oh, you're following 1,172 people.
Yeah.
Is this hair you've actually worked on?
Yeah, those are all my clients.
Oh. Is this a self-taught
No, I'm a licensed professional.
license? How many years did you?
All right, ready? You guys ready?
I've been doing hair for 6 years.
So the first thing we're really going to talk about, this is a function. Everyone agree it's a function?
Yes, we
Right,
are
there's 2
concurrent.
places in a function where we can kind of change it to do specific things. One is by changing that void word to a different word, right? We're going to the return type, basically how functions get output, right? Usually when I talk about output, we're talking about output to the screen. Agreed? That's kind of where your mind probably goes when I say output. When I say input, your mind probably says input from the user, right? We're gonna kind of throw those away today and say that functions can take input. They're gonna take input a certain way, and functions can produce output, and they'll produce output a certain way. So it's not output to the screen; it's output out of the function. Okay, it's not input from the user; it's input into the function. Okay, and we're gonna kind of see how that happens. Output comes via changing this word. Input comes via putting in basically variables inside of those parentheses. So we'll kind of see how that works. Allow data to come into our member functions, which in essence will help data come into our objects, and then how data can come out of our functions, basically in essence how data comes out. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's go. So we have these things called parameters. That's what goes in the parentheses. We have these things called the return type. That's that first word. Right? So functions can take input. Just like your program can take that input from the user, functions can take input into them. Right? It's not input from the user, although that input could come from the user. That's not necessarily where it's coming from. Functions can take input. Right? They do that through these things called parameters. So parameters are the way that functions take input. Right? We define them in the parentheses of the function. Right? So your member function declaration could look like this. Notice I have a function called what? Input. This input function is not getting input from the user. It is getting input via its parameters. You notice in the parentheses I have two variables. Right? These variables, because we like to give things names, are called parameters. Right? So these parameters are the way that my function takes input into it.
Now, is that a way to do it so you don't have to write as much inside class, or do you still have to do class?
This declaration would go inside of class.
But then would you still need int month and int day in class as attributes?
Right? Is that month underscore?
No.
No. Is that day underscore? No.
Got it.
Okay. This is the input. Right? That input is going to be stored where? Probably.
Inside the function.
Inside the function, inside of month underscore and day underscore. So think of this as like the external data into your object, right? This is data coming into your object. The data comes in via your parameters, and most of the time you're going to take that data and store it internally into your attributes. All right, so you're going to take that external data, parameters, and store it internally into your object and its attributes.
So those are that function's own special variables.
Those exist only in that function.
Like you couldn't go into int main and use month without it.
Are you good so far? Right? So these are variables, which means that inside of the definition of the input function, you can use them. Right? So now in this function, you have access to all your underscore variables, right? Your attributes, because you're part of the class. And in addition, you have access to your parameters, right? The variables declared in those parentheses. All right? So let's look at this. Yeah.
So are those parameters automatically be stored into the input underscore?
No, what we have to write the first. So we're going to see today that the pattern's almost always the same. You're going to say the underscore variable equals the parameter variable, right? So the parameter variable gets stored into the underscore variable. It's always going to be that way. When you're storing data into your object, it'll always be the external thing getting stored into the internal. All right, so once we get used to that pattern, it'll just look the same. Right? So what happens is that to access the member function, right, I use the dot operator, right? And when I call the function, that's a function call when I use dot and I say the name of it, parens. But now in the parentheses, I have to provide values that are going to go into my parameters. So this is how I get the data into the function. Right? The parameters are the placeholders where the data is going to go. The function call says, what data do I want to put there? That data could be a variable, right? It could be a literal value, so just a number or something. It could be an expression, so you can technically pass in like 5 times 3. It'll do the math for you. So for example, right, here's my today object, which we kind of worked with already. Right, the today object has an attribute. Well, it has 2 attributes, right? Day underscore, month underscore, which are currently garbage, because on creation, they're garbage. Agreed?
Agreed.
Right? And now I can say today.input, and then notice in the parentheses 10, 5.
And that's in the order you wrote them.
And that is in the order, right? Because I called it int month, comma, int day. Month is going to get the value of
10.
And day is going to get the value of 5. So order is important. Right? So let's look at that. Here's my function call, right? And here's my function declaration or definition down here. Right? So I say call the input function on an object of type day of year. So here's an input function for objects of type day of year. Right? Notice I say 10, 5. 10 and 5 are both what type?
Integer.
Integer. And notice month and day are also both ints, right? So in the order, 10 is going to get placed in what?
Month.
And 5 gets placed in day. And now in this function, we take that 10 and we store it into which basically says that today's attribute of month underscore is now what? 10. We're going to take that 5 and store it into day underscore. So today's attribute of day's value is now. Does that make a little bit of sense? Everyone see that? The external data comes in, right? The external data comes in via my parameters, and they get stored into my internal data, my attributes.
You're doing that because you could also write a tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
And then
So anytime I want to
input.
set up a day of the year, all I have to say is my object dot input and pass in values, right? As opposed to saying, right, today dot month underscore equals 10, today dot day underscore equals 5. Okay? And very soon we're going to take away that ability to do that. The only way we'll be able to do it is via our behavior. Right? That's it. There's going to be an important reason why. Good so far? Right, so these are parameters, how we get data into our functions. Data comes in via the parameters, via a function call, right? This data here, everyone say I just hard-coded it in, which is why it's off, right? Because today, obviously, it's not October yet, right? Now, these could be variables. So in main, you can ask the user, please enter today's date, and then pass that variable in, or please enter today's month, pass that variable in, right? You could do that, right? But I'm trying to show that input into functions doesn't care where the input came from. It can come from the user, it can be hard-coded, right? It can come from a file, right? It can come from anywhere, right? But that function says, I only take 2 integers, right, as my input. If you're going to use this behavior, you have to give me 2 integers. Does that make sense, right? That's what we're saying, right? And then those 2 integers will get stored into month underscore.
So does that mess up when you're trying to do other stuff because the values are different and you have to reset the value every time?
No, right? Because when the function gets called, it's like fresh.
Okay, so it only gets month underscore only gets that value when the function is called and then it goes back to garbage?
No, it doesn't go back to garbage, right? At the end of this function called today's attributes have been set. If I create a new object, then those will be garbage and I can then call the input function on that one.
Okay.
All right. So that's half of what we're talking about, right? Input into functions goes via parameters. Output from functions goes via the return type, right? So the return type is the first word, right, in a function declaration, right? So far, everything's been void, and we're now going to change that to the other one. So functions can return a value or perform an action and not return a value. Those are the void functions. That's all we've done so far. I want to do output. It's an action, right? It doesn't produce a value. Right? I know it's the output value, but the function doesn't really produce a value. It says just do this, right? So the output function just does something, right? So it's a void function. Other functions make calculations, they produce a value, and so that's where the return of value comes in. So the first word in that member function declaration is the return type. Notice I said type, right? So in your head you should think what? Double, char, string.
Is float a type?
Float, yeah. Float's a type. Short, right, all of those. But right, kind of our basic one. Right? Now to get the data out, we don't see out it because that goes to where? The console screen. Here I'm saying you can produce a value and then you can do something with that value. All right, so instead of see out in it, I'm going to return it. Return should be familiar because at the end of main, what do? Return 0. Right? And at the beginning of the main's called what? Int main. Int main returns 0. Notice the int and the 0 are both what? Integers. Right? Does that make sense? Right, so the value produced is going to be determined by you based on the return type you give the function. Right? So if my function's return type is char, I just return y, right, inside a single quote. Because y inside a single quote is a what? 0. Okay. So let's look at all this in code. Hopefully it'll start making a little bit more sense. Remember, we're working on this day of year class, so we're going to kind of get that set up and start working from there. So I'm just going to get kind of stuff set up here.
No, it's not there.
So once again, class gets declared above main after I include a using statement. So here I can say, right, class day of year, right, open curly, closing curly, throw my semicolon. We're gonna do our public stuff, and inside of public, we're gonna define both our behaviors, right? And we're gonna define our attributes. And I like to just define our attributes first, right? So we have two attributes, int month underscore, right, and int day underscore. Right? Saying that every single day of your object that gets created will have a month and a day. Every single one that gets created. Right? So let's look at our behaviors, right? We already talked about one, right? That was the output one. Right, so there's output. Right, and now we're gonna write two more. One called input, not input. Right? Now the input function took input, right? So inside of it, I create these things called what? You remember? Right? Yeah, these variables are called parameters. Right? And then we also are going to create another one called get the month. You'll notice get the month has no parameters, meaning it doesn't take input, but doesn't produce a value. Yes, what does it produce? An integer. Notice the word is int, so we're saying get the month produces an integer, which makes sense because the whole job of that function is to do what? Get the month, which is a integer. Questions on those three so far? Right? Now, this is what your coding assignment 3A is all about. It says you should copy all of these things and put them where? The bottom, right? So below main, I'm going to paste them in. Right? Right? I'm going to add the class name, right? Colon, colon before the function name. Change the semicolon to curly. Right? I'm just going to do the exact same thing again. Class name, colon, colon before function name, semicolon to curlies. And class name, colon, colon for the function name, and semicolon to curlies. Is that ever not going to be the case, or is it always going to be the same? Always going to be the same, right? Always going to be, right? If above main output doesn't have anything in the parentheses, then below main will it have anything in the parentheses? No. Right? If above main input has two integers, below main it's going to have what? Two integers, right? Sometimes students try to add stuff into the parentheses thinking that's where it's supposed to go. It's supposed to look exactly like above main. If you want to add something to it below main, then you better go add it above main as well. Most of the time you're not going to do that, right? We basically set up the fact that we can now start writing these behaviors. We can now say, what are these behaviors going to do? Does that make sense a little bit? All right, I'm just going to compile it just to make sure I don't have any typos. Right? Not that I ever make any, but so I'm not going to bore us with the output function. I'm just going to copy the code in there and just talk about it a little bit. You don't want to sit here and watch me write this one forever. Right?
I mean,
notice my output function switches on what? Remember, see that? On line 26, it switches on the month, right? And if the month is 1, then what do I output? January. And if the month is 2, I output February. And if it's 3, I output March, right? Very similar to probably what you did in your card class last lab, right? Where you said, right? You either used a switch or an if and said if it was 11, see out Jet, right? Else if it was 12, see out Queen, right? Else if it was 13, see out. Does that make sense? Basically, I'm saying on output, I don't want to say 1/1. I want to say February 1st, or February 1, right? So I'm going to output the month as a string, right? And then, right, I'm going to output a space, right? After my switch, notice I just output a switch and a space and then the day, right? So if it's today, right, 3/13, right, it's going to output March space 13. Does that make sense a little bit? Right, so that's all. Anytime I call output, that's what it's going to do. It's going to take what are the values of my object, right, and then output that. We're more interested in the input function and get the month function. So the input function says, I have two parameters, right, month and day. They're parameters because they're inside the parentheses. And I need to do something with those parameters, right? What do I normally do with the parameters? Store them where? into those attributes that we coded beforehand, right? So here, right, I tried to make it easy for you because this parameter is called what?
Month.
Month. So where's it probably going to be stored into?
Month underscore.
Right? Month underscore. Month underscore gets assigned what? Month. And day underscore, right, gets assigned what?
Day.
Day. Everything, the underscore variables are always on what side? The left, because they're getting assigned into, and the parameters, that external input is on what side? The left. All right. The day of the year function, its whole goal here is to what?
Get the month.
Get the month, right? Now, if this function, we defined it as returning an integer, well, to return something out of a function, I just use the word what?
Return.
Return, right? What am I returning?
Month.
The month, right? Because it's called get the month. The month is stored where?
Oh,
Month.
it's
Right?
in.
Has to be month underscore, right? Because there is no variable from line 73 to line 75. Is there a variable called month? No, right? There is a variable called month in input function. Am I in the input function now?
Nope.
No, right? So I'm in the get the month function. There's no variables created, so the only variables I have access to are the attributes, right? The members of the class. Month underscore and day underscore. And between those two, I figured out it wasn't day underscore because the function was called get the. Make sense a little bit? Right? Once again, this is all just setting up the blueprint before we even go into main and actually start using it. So let's go into main. Let's see what we can do with it. I'm going to create two objects, right? Day of year, I'm going to create today, and I'm going to create yesterday. Right? Two objects that look the same, both currently have garbage values, but they are distinct variables, so I can give each of them their own distinct values. Right? So I can say today.input, and in the input function, I can pass in 3, 13. Right? This says, for the today object, go to the input function and use the values 3 and 13. Which means I leave main, and I go to which function? Input, right? I go to the input function, right? And it said use the values 3, 13. Which means that month becomes what? And day becomes 13. And I take that 3 and I store it into month underscore. And I take that 13 and I store it into day underscore. Remember, month underscore and day underscore of the object what?
Day
Of the object
today.
today. So I said today.input. If I had said yesterday.input, then it would have stored it into the yesterday object. But I said today.input. Right? That line 20 is basically the same as doing this. Right? You can say yesterday dot month underscore equals 3. And yesterday dot day underscore equals 12. Basically, line 20 and line 22 and 23 do the exact same thing, right? One does it in a behavior, right? I pass the input into the function. One just does it directly, okay? This may make more sense to you right now, but I'm going to take this away in about 5 minutes. Okay? The only way that we're going to be able to do things is via the behavior. I'm going to give you a sound reason, I think it's a sound reason, why that is. Make sense? Right? If I want to see, right, today's output, right, I just say today dot what?
Output.
Output. Right. And then I'm going to show you that we also had a yesterday, right? Yesterday or today, doesn't really matter. But I'm going to say yesterday dot get the month, open, close, paren. Right? This says, for the yesterday object, go to the function called get the month and do whatever it says to do. Right? And so this would leave main, go down to get the month, and get the month just returns what? Month underscore, right? Who's month underscore?
Today or yesterday's.
Yesterday's month underscore, right? So yesterday dot get the month actually becomes
Semicolon.
the value. Yeah, I haven't fully fleshed it out yet. Right? It becomes exactly what was returned, right? And yesterday's month underscore was what? 3. So that line, everyone see the line that I highlighted there, yesterday dot get the month? Really, that's like you writing 3. Okay, does that make sense? That's like you writing 3. Because it's going to go to that function and it's going to become the value that is returned. Right? Because the function returns the value, it becomes the value that is returned. What do I need to do with a number or anything like that? What are the 2 things I could probably do with it?
Output it
Store
or
it
store
or
it.
output it, right? So I'm going to output it just because I don't feel like storing it anywhere. Right? So I'm going to go back. Right? So I can't just say yesterday did I get the month. I need to do something with it. So I could say C out yesterday did I get the month.
There you go.
And then
That makes
and line and a semicolon, right? Once again, it goes to the get the month function, uses yesterday's value, and that function said return month underscore, right? Yesterday's month underscore was 3. That make a little bit of sense? Functions that return a value become the value that is returned. How come I didn't have to store the output function, right? On line 21, I said today.output. Why didn't I have to store that or output?
So ask the question one more time.
Right? On line 21, I called the output function, but I'm not counting it. I'm not storing it in a variable. Why not?
It's because you're using today's object. So
Okay, not
the
that.
attributes are in
Because
there.
it's on the function that's like outside of it.
Right? It's in this function, but the key is that this function is what type of function?
Void.
It's a void function. Meaning, does it produce a value? No, if it doesn't produce a value, I don't need to output the value, and I don't need to store the value. Right? Only functions that produce value, so I need to worry about that. Right? So void functions are action functions. Just do this. Right? Run whatever code's in there. Right? Functions that aren't void, right? They have some other return type says, I'm going to give you a value back, and you better do something with that value. Otherwise, you're just like, literally, it's like you're doing this in your code. Right? It's just like you're saying, oh, 3 semicolon, 8 semicolon.
Can you technically just use
Back
everything in a void?
Huh?
Could you technically just do everything as void?
No, because if your function produces a value, you don't want it to be a void. So like last class we did like raise to power and sum to. Really those functions shouldn't be void functions because they produce a value. They should return the value so I can use it. It's all about getting the value out of the function so that you can do something with it. Sometimes you want to output it. Sometimes you want to like use it in a calculation. Although the months I don't know what I'm going to calculate.
Payroll.
Right? You get bonuses based on the month, right? So you make more money in December than you do in January. Like I'm gonna take my vacation in January. I'm gonna run it, right? Very boring output. I get March 13th because I set up that today object to have a value of 313, right? And then the 3 was get the month for yesterday. Make sense? Right? I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna put this on you. I would highly recommend you kind of do this through the debugger so you can see line by line, like, okay, I'm here, where am I going, right? This object got created, these are its values, right? Where do I go from here? So this would be a great thing for you to just go through, right, on your own and see, okay, where am I going? Why are there 2 objects? Which object value am I using? Okay. All this code is in, right, your class examples, right? So you can have that. Questions? We good? All right, let's talk some more. Right? So let's talk about this idea of encapsulation. Remember I told you the public word, right? We would talk about it. That time's come. Right? So let's talk about it. So encapsulation, which is one of the 3 tenets of object-oriented programming, the major ones, right? We have encapsulation, we have polymorphism, and we have inheritance. Right? So let's talk about encapsulation and why it's important. Right? So encapsulation is all about what does the external programmer need to know and what do they not need to know. Okay? This is where things get a little confusing because right now, like today, we wrote the class day of year, and then we also implemented the class day of year, right? We implemented it in main. We created the class blueprint, and then in main, I created objects from that class. Everyone agree? But a lot of times, your goal is to either implement the class or to create the blueprint and not both. Okay, let's go back to C and Reader. Right? C and Reader is a class. Did you write it?
No.
No, all you had to do was what?
Use it.
Right? Implement it. Okay? Right now, though, when we're writing our classes, I'm making you do both. I'm making you both write the class and also what?
Implement it.
For code assignment 3B, you will just write the class. I've written all the code to implement it. Right, and that code will test it to make sure it does exactly what I want it to do. But your goal will just be set up the blueprint, and I've actually made the main. Right, so the roles are kind of reversed a little bit. Right, you write the blueprint, I'll write the main from your blueprint. Does that make sense a little bit? Right, and so encapsulation is the idea of if you're writing the blueprint, what does the other user, right, whoever's going to use it, what do they need to know and use, and what do they not need to know? And so we encapsulate, right, hide the pieces that the user doesn't really need. Okay, so we're going to hide those pieces. All right, so let's talk about this. Our day of year class has a function named output month. Let's just say it does, right? Let's do a little bit of magic. We didn't write something like that, right? It outputs the month, right? If the documentation says it outputs a month as a string, right? Then we know every time I call that function, I'm going to get output as a what?
String.
String. Do I need to know how it was stored in the object itself? No. Could it have been a string in the object?
Yep.
Yeah. Could it have been an integer in the object?
Yep.
Sure. Could it have been a character in the object?
Yep.
Sure. Right? Does that matter to me? I just need to know that that function named that does whatever it does. Does that make sense a little bit? Right? So the details have been encapsulated from me. The only time I might care is like for efficiency, like maybe the programmer wrote it terribly, so I want to make it more efficient. But overall, you don't really need to know. Right? So I'm saying, is it an integer? I don't really need to know, right? Did they 0 start their thing where January 0 or is January 1? Right? Is it a string, right, with the name of the month or maybe an abbreviation, right? And hopefully you get the idea that I don't need to know that, right? What do I need to know? I need to know the thing that is called the interface. I need to know the name of the class and the name of the behaviors, right? Because I can use the behaviors to do something. Does that make sense? And everything else, I don't need to know, right? Think about it. For C and Reader, what do I need to know? The name of the class, which is C and Reader, right? And the name of the behaviors, right? Read char, read int, read string. That's all I needed to know to use it. I didn't need to know how that was happening behind the scenes, just that it worked correctly. Does that make sense a little bit? Everyone kind of see that? Right, so encapsulation is the idea of hiding the things that the user doesn't need. And there's a really good reason to do that. All right, and we're going to look at that in just a second. So 2 keywords to implement encapsulation. One is going to be what? Public, and the other one's going to be known as private. Right? So we have public and private. The things that are allowed, and private, the things that are not allowed. Right? The private things are the things that really are encapsulated, and the public things are like that. These are the things you can do. All right, so let's look at this. I've slightly updated my day of year class. Right? I have the public keyword, but I also now have the what? The private keyword. What's public? Just output, right? And what's private? Month and day. Now output is my behavior, right? And month and day are my what? Attributes. So I'm saying that the user can use output, right? But they can't touch month and day. Okay, why would I not want the user to have access to month and day? Anyone have an idea? Why would that be important not to have the user touch month and day? Screw it up. How would they screw it up? Change the value, okay. So we can't really change the behavior. We can change the value, right? Because right now I'm saying month and day are of type what?
Int.
Int. Which means what are the possible values that a month and day can be?
Whole numbers.
Integers, right? Which go whole numbers from negative what? 2 billion something to what? Positive 2 billion something. Right, everyone kind of good with that? But we know that a month only goes from what to what?
1 to 12.
1 to 12, and a day only goes from 1 to 31, right? So really, for a day of year, right, because it's an object, we're representing the real world thing, right? A month should only be limited to 1 through 12, and a day should only be limited from 1 to 31, right? But what values can a user give? Any possible integer values, right?
They could also just type in y. Nothing's stopping them from doing that.
The only thing stopping them from doing that is that they are integers. You can't give them values that can't translate to.
It'll give them an error.
Yeah.
Okay.
Compile it, right? They have to be integers. So I can't give it like February as a string. It's not going to work, right? So the data type limits some bad input, but then we need to limit the rest of the bad input.
I was just
Okay.
thinking, because you said don't assume that they,
Right. But they won't compile, so you're okay there. Data types, they won't compile. Right? So I need to make sure that the user can't access these directly because I don't want them to give values that are incorrect for a day of year. A day of year should be 1 through 12 for the month and 1 through 31 for the day. It should not hold any other values because it represents a day of the year, so we don't want to make it an invalid day of the year. That makes sense? Right? So the way I do that is to limit the user to only use my behaviors. Right? So in my behaviors, I can limit the user, right, and handle basically error by writing pretty much basic history. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second. Right, so here's my class, right? Private names are not accessible from the outside. Basically, I mean, like in main. Right? In main, I can't access it. Access via the dot operator. Right, that's invalid. Right? Objects get created the same day of year today. That creates my today object. That object has a month and a day. But you can't say today.month underscore gets assigned to because month is private. Month is private, so you can't access the attributes because they come after the private colon. Right? Month and day come after private colon, so they are private. Output comes after the public colon, so it is public.
and that's how you'll be able to do that value, because that whole like int month underscore equals month. And that's how you'll give it the value?
Yeah, right. So right now, this is a crappy
Because
class.
that's inside
You can't do anything with it. Right? The only thing that you can do with this class is what?
Go into output and then
Go
change
into
it.
output, right? And so it will just output the garbage value, right? So I need more than just what's here. Right? I need my input function. Right? That's my key. Right? That is going to come in via my input. Anything following a keyword belongs to that keyword, right? So you can type public colon and then you can type 5 things. All those things will be public. Private colon, type 5 things. All those things will be what? Private. Right? You can have multiple ones. So you can say public this, private that, public this, private that. Not recommended. Right? You should have one public section and one private section. Classes by default are private, which is why we've added the public keyword when we introduce classes, because in order to use a class, something has to be public, right? In order to use a class, something has to be public, right? You can make a sweet building, but if it has no doors, then no one can ever get on the inside, right? So you have to make something public.
I should have a helicopter.
Yeah, so maybe I missed this, but the only difference that we would find.
ICBM will get that building open.
Yeah, so structures by default are public, classes by default are private. Yeah. We define structures as only having access. Technically, they can have behaviors as well, but we define them as only having access. And that's a holdover because structures existed in C, and in C they only had access. There was no function. Everybody good so far? Right? Right. Technically, you need a public. You don't necessarily need a private, but you should always make your attributes private because you want to protect them. So it's good practice to make all of your public member names, which are the attributes, make those private, and it's usually almost, if not all, of your behaviors will be what? Public. So behaviors will be public, right? Attributes will be private. There's some small cases where those get reversed a little bit, but for the most part, that's what it is.
Doesn't matter which one's first.
It technically doesn't. Style-wise, we'll always have public come first, because which public or private, what can the user use?
Public.
Public. So do they want to see all the stuff they can't use and then find the stuff they can use, or would they rather see the stuff they can use first? Right? Some people, some styles, they don't ever say private, they just write all the private stuff first and then say public. Right? Because technically you do that because classes by default. Right? But once again, I don't want to see all the stuff I can't use, I want to see the stuff. The public always does.
Will that be like an instance where somewhere you find a job at wants you to style-wise do it like
They
that?
might, yeah. And then obviously you write style based on the job.
And again, if you want to find out just use structures in this case, that you can automatically default for all the comments.
Right. The big reason is that when you talk about automotive programming, regardless of if it's in C++ or any language, class is the overarching movement. Right? So we want to use a word that makes sense. any other language is going to use that. So we want to use that. All right, let's look at this. You guys ever wonder what's on those slides that I just skipped over? Like, why did you put them in there? They're worthless. I get paid by the slide, so.
You have to like appease
try to
the
add more.
student OSHA gods, right?
Right, exactly. All right, so I'm just gonna make one tiny little, right, change. Chris, you gotta make me on green then.
Chris Henderson.
Oh,
Damn it, Chris.
All right.
is that better?
There
So,
you go.
yes, there we go. I'm gonna just right here, I'm gonna make my attributes private. Everyone good? All I did was add one tiny little word with a colon inside of my class declaration. Good so far, right? But what I'm saying is that month and day are inaccessible from the external user, right, from the outside. So I added the private word, I try to compile it, and you'll find out that my code doesn't compile anymore. Right? All I did was add one word, and all of a sudden my code's not compiling. Why?
Oh, it's because that thing you're gonna show us.
Right? Exactly, right? Notice it says, on line 13, it says error, the integer, day of year, month is private, and it says, the next error says within this context, line 23, yesterday dot month underscore gets assigned 3. But I do not have direct access to month underscore anymore because it is private. So encapsulation is enforced by the compiler. The compiler enforces encapsulation that says, if this was made private, then you don't have access to it, so you can't compile it. Does that make sense? Right? So where would I, right, fix this? Well, in main, I can't say yesterday.month and yesterday.day. What can I say instead?
You could say yesterday dot output or input, and then do parameters.
And then I can pass in, right, 3. Are we good with that? Oh, did I just delete it?
Yeah.
It was nice, now it's not. Right, so now I get March 13th, and I guess I never outputted yesterday, right? So let's just output it. No more getting a month.
Yes, Thursday.
This goes.
Right, and I get March 13th, March 12th, right? The only way to get input into my day of year objects is via the behavior. In this case, the input behavior, the output behavior.
So this would be yesterday dot.
Now, I want to show you something really critical, right? What if yesterday was -10, 100?
Be 10 months behind and 100 days ahead.
Right, that's a very odd day of the year. Everyone agree? Right now, though, if I run it, right, code compiles, everything works, right, and I just hit
100.
space 100, right? Why? Well, in my output function, I switched on 1 through 12 to output January through December. There wasn't like a default, right? So if it isn't a valid date, right, invalid month, right, it just doesn't output anything. So there's a space and then I output data. Make sense? Right? So I made my data private, but then I also said, hey, if you want to change the data, just use this function, right, which basically allows the user to access and change it. Does that make sense? Right? So just making it private is not enough. I have to make sure any place where external data comes into my object that I check it to make sure that it is valid data. Does that make sense? Right? And so what I want to do, right, my data is coming in via what function? Input. Right? So I want to make sure that my input is correct. So before I store it, I need to check the data and make sure that it is correct data, right? So I'm just going to write a simple if statement, right? If I'm going to check, you can check for correct or incorrect. I'm going to check for incorrect data. So if month, right? Month is the external thing coming in. If month, right, is less than or equal, let's just go less than 1, right? Or month is what? Greater than 12. Everyone agree that's an invalid month?
Mm-hmm.
And so all I'm going to say is take that user's input, and this time, let's just make it 1. Right? If you can't figure out what a correct month is, I'm going to make it change again. Right? That's basically what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right? And then, right, I can write another simple if statement. if day is less than 1 or day is greater than 31, right, then what?
Oh, stupid.
Right.
Oh, no.
Then, right, day is going to be what?
1.
Let's do 1 again. Right? And now that I've checked the user's data and I've made it correct, it was incorrect, now I can take the corrected user data and store it. Right? I can take the corrected user data and store it. Right? Just doing this, all I did was change their input. Right? I still need to store it though. Right? I still need to store it. Does that make a little bit of sense? I'm checking the external data to make sure it's correct. Once I've made it correct, then store it. Right? So let's run it. And now you'll see that, right? Instead of being, right, 100, it's now what?
January 1st.
Which pretty much tells me that it was.
Oh, they didn't both January 1st from you. What did I do wrong?
Maybe your if statement, maybe.
Greater than symbol.
Something wrong.
You didn't put 1.
Oh, I did. Haha.
Does this make sense a little bit? Anytime you get external data from the user or from anywhere into your class, you want to check it to make sure it's the correct data. Right? And they can't now directly access the data because you made it private. So you said you have to go through these channels to do this, and right when you come to these channels, we're going to make sure that your data is correct. It's called sanitizing your data. Right? You're going to sanitize your data, make sure that it is the correct data for what you need. Everything good so far? Encapsulation hides the unnecessary details from the user, which also, in essence, adds security to your class objects. Right? Your day of year can never be incorrect data. It will always be a day of the year. If you're provided incorrect data, it will be January 1st, which is still a correct day of the year. Make sense? All right. One last thing to talk about. Do you think there's more? Yeah. One last thing. We'll do it quick. Right? Because we now have our data private, we actually have special functions that are made to interact with our attributes. So we have these special functions called accessors and mutators, and their goals are to interact with my private attributes. And so let's kind of look at them. They're like a formula. Like once you see the pattern, you'll realize that they always look the same. All right, so let's talk about this. Right, so our memory variables are private, which means we no longer have access to them. Right, so I need some way to access them, and that comes in with these accessors and mutators. Right, so accessor functions, right? They're named after the fact that they access the data, which means that they return the data. Right, so you can have an accessor for a month, and its whole goal is to get the month. You can have an accessor for a day, and its whole goal is to get the what? Get the day. Right. We also have mutators, right? Their whole goal is to mutate the data, or in a more normal way of saying it, right, change the data. Right? So mutators' job is not to get the data, but to set the data. Okay? So you'll also hear accessors and mutators called getters and setters. Getters get the data, accessor. Setters set the data, we call those mutators. We have accessors, which are getters, and mutators, which are setters.
Does he like the input and output function?
Kind of, right? Very similar, except for the fact that these are for a specific attribute. So our input function, our output function, they deal with like all of our attributes. These are for a specific attribute. You're going to have an accessor. So I have 2 attributes, then I have 2 accessors, and I have 2 mutators. So 2 functions per attribute. All right, so accessors read the data, their whole goal is to get the data, right? They're really easy to write, right? So if I have int month underscore, my accessor is just called int month parent, right? So all I did was change the underscore to what? Parentheses. What am I saying though? I'm saying this month function has no input, right? Because there's no parameters, but it produces a what?
Integer.
An integer, and the integer that it's produced, you're going to bet is going to be what?
From
The value of month underscore. This month function is going to produce that, right? It's always going to be that way. So int day underscore as an attribute, its accessor is called what? Int
month.
day parent.
So if we
Yes.
had the memory.
Right? Oh, I think you missed it. we're gonna have the underscore, we're gonna have parens, and then we'll have one without. So month's gonna show up lots of places.
We have.
Many different things depending on how we're
I
doing it. So if my parameter, if my attribute is int foo underscore, then my accessor is what? Int foo paren, right? String bar underscore becomes string bar paren. Everyone see that? It's just a pattern.
Is that why we have the underscore?
Yes.
Oh, that's why.
To help us differentiate.
Okay.
All these, right? Because month shows up in all these places.
But the assessor replaced
So
that?
if we has a member name?
And we'll see that here.
Can we put params in that?
What?
Can we put parameters in that?
You could, but what would be the point of the parameter? You're trying to get them on, you probably don't want to change it if you're anything.
Word.
If I got the month, but at the same time I accidentally changed the month to something else, that'd probably be better.
Well, and in that case, would it be parameters or would it be arguments?
They would be parameters. Arguments are the things that get passed in.
Right.
So parameters are the variables in the function, arguments are in the function call.
I just want to inform you on the previous slide, like the third bullet, it's not correct grammar there. So if we has a member name.
Have.
Yeah. I just wanted to point that out.
I might fix it. I probably forget about it.
No, you should just leave it like that.
Kind of keep you on your toes a little bit. All right, mutator functions change the data. All right, so they are void functions because you're not getting values, you're setting values, right? And what they have is a parameter to have you set the value, right? Mutators are where you need to have your error checking, right? That is where the data is coming in. And so your goal is then to check that data and make sure that it is correct down, right? So mutators are where your error checking is, right? So mutator functions start with the word set because they set the data. So assuming once again I have int month underscore, it's always going to be void set underscore month. And notice the parameter is called what?
In month,
Int month.
without an underscore.
Without an underscore, right? That's the external data coming in, going to be stored into the internal data, which is month underscore.
So it's making sure that there's a value in that month.
And checking for.
We'll have to write the code to check it. So once again, if I int foo underscore, it would be void set underscore foo paren int foo. Everyone see the pattern's always the same, right? Void set underscore day int day. Right, the pattern will always be the same. You're just replacing month and month with the name of your attribute, whatever the name is. All right. And I'll show you here how we do that.
Inside those parameters are your.
Yeah. We'll see. I think it'll make some sense to us. So I need a bunch more functions. I need 2 accessor functions. And I need 2 mutator functions.
Meter?
Mutator.
Who's meter?
There you go. Right? So accessor functions are named after my attributes. So if my attribute is int month underscore, it's just int month, open close paren. Or, right, int day, open close paren. Mutators are a little bit longer to write. For a mutator, I say void set underscore attribute, so set underscore month. Right, and then in the parentheses, I say int month. Or void set underscore day, and in the parentheses, I say int day. So I wrote 4 functions, which means now I need to do what with them?
Copy paste.
Copy paste. So I wrote those, I go all the way down to the bottom, and I add them in. Okay, so it really should be accessors, right? Accessors, page void.
Is he this user?
Mentor.
No, meter.
Once again,
I'm
class
live streaming,
name,
somebody got on
colon, right, semicolon to what? Curly.
This again.
Class name, colon, right, semicolon to curly. Class name, colon, semicolon curly. Class name, colon.
So we do this to access the data that's private, right?
Well, the accessors will access the data that's private, and the mutators will change the data.
Okay.
Yeah, that's their whole goal. Right? Accessors, they're almost always just one line of code, right? Month, as an accessor is trying to get the month, so we just return month underscore. Day, as an accessor, right, is trying to return what? Day underscore. Right? If it was foo, it would be return foo underscore, right? They almost always look exactly the same. Mutators, though, are going to look a little bit different, and this is where I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go up to my input function, because really my input function has all the code that I need for my mutator. Right? In my mutator, right, set month, right, is really going to be check to make sure the month's valid, right, and then set the month. Right? And day is going to be the same thing, make sure the day is valid, and then go ahead and set the day. So look at this, line 106, I say set month, input comes in via my parameter int month, and if the month is invalid, I set the month to 1, and then I store that month inside a month underscore. Day is the same way, right? Input comes in here, I check that to make sure it's a valid day. If it is, if it's not, I set it to 1, and then I store that day into my app. Right? That make a little bit of sense? Right? It's the same pattern, right? It'll always be the same pattern. At the very least, in every mutator, you're going to say the parameter gets assigned to the attribute. Right? Day gets assigned to day underscore. Month gets assigned to month underscore. Foo gets assigned to foo underscore. Bar gets assigned to bar underscore. Always be in that pattern. But probably what you need before that is some kind of what? Fair check. Right? To make sure that the data is valid for what you want. Now, I want to talk about one last thing, and then we'll be good.
So would you erase the code you had earlier with those conditions? Or would you keep it? Yeah.
I would keep it because input allows me to give both values at once, right? Where these only allow me to give one and then the other, right? So I'm going to keep both. But, right, you're leading me right into what I was going to talk about. What did you see me do? What did I do with the code inside of input? What did I do? I copy and pasted it, right? And what did I say never do? Copy and paste, right? Because now I have, except, right, for the class declaration. Because now I have the same if statements, like in multiple places. And what if I found a problem with one of the if statements? What would happen? Change it, right, in all those places, right? So it's better to have your code in one place, right, wrap up the behavior in one place, and then just call that behavior from any other place that you want to do it, right? And so we're going to add another level, right? You're like, we already had too many levels, right? We're going to add another level to what we're doing, because in this input function, I can actually type code like this, and then I'll explain it. I can just say set day and pass in the day, right? And I can say set month and pass in the month.
Does it be int day or int month?
It does not, because it's now I'm just using the variable.
Okay.
Right? The variable is called int month, but the variable name is just month, right? So I call set day and I pass in whatever the value of the day variable was, right? I'm basically offloading my work. Right? This is like when teachers have you grade your own assignments. Right? You give me the assignment, but then I'll pass the assignment back to you, and then you do the work for me, right? I'm basically saying, if you come into the input function with values, which at some point you will, right? I'm going to say, take that value for day and go to the set day function and let it do the work. Or go to the set month function and let it do the work. Right? Why? Well, in set day and set month, that's where I have my error checking code, right? So everything's funneling to the same place. So there's a single point of failure, right? So if there's something wrong with the set day function, right, I fix that one place and everything else kind of fixes it. That make sense? So I don't need to write the same code in multiple places. I just need to call the behavior of whatever code I'm going to do. Right? So now in main, it's kind of weird. In main, I call the input function, but then the input function calls the what? Set day function, right? I'm like 3 levels down. Main calls input, input calls set day. Then I go back to input, and then input calls what? Set month. And I go back to input, and then input ends, and I go back to where? Right, so it kind of jumps around a little bit. But actually makes our code a lot easier and more logically kind of sensible. Cool? All right, let me talk about your code assignment real quick. Let me talk about today's lab. I recommend you do lab with someone today, especially because I haven't given you an hour to do it. You can do it in that hour, but I recommend doing it with someone because these concepts are still kind of different. Overall questions before we get into today's lab?
Nope.
All right, you could open up the assignment 3 PDF, but I'll basically just do it off of the code here, right? Your goal for assignment 3 is to take the code that I provided you, right? It's attached to the assignment. Well, no, it's in Cloud 9 under assignments 3, and do basically what it says. Okay. In assignment 3A, you're going to make what we call stub functions. Okay. Stub functions are functions that compile but don't do anything. Right. Basically, everyone good? When I took the class declaration behaviors, I pasted them below main, and then I change them, right? Add the class name, change the semicolon to curlies. What you've made are stub functions. Did the code compile? Yes. Did the code do anything? No, right? They're just stubs. They're like the blueprint or the backbone, but you haven't filled in all the other stuff. Okay, so assignment 3's goal is just to make the stub functions, right? So we'll talk more about the distance class next week when you actually have to write the real class. But for now, you'll notice that you have a behavior here, right? A behavior here, a behavior, a behavior, and a behavior. So you have 5 functions. Right? Your goal is to what? Copy them, paste them where?
Below main.
Below main. Change, right? Class name, colon before function name, semicolons to what? Curly. Right? In a couple functions, like everyone see the get distance function, everyone see that it produces a value. So stub functions that produce a value, you just need to return a value. I don't care what value, although I do here, right? I tell you to return what? 0, right? The code is expecting that function to produce a value, so you better return something, right? But because it's a stub function, you just return whatever 0 is for that, right? So the 2 double functions, you just return 0. If you do that correctly, notice in main, it says testing your class, and it says what? Do not what?
Alter main.
Alter main. So you are not writing anything in main, you're just pasting the code where? Below main, where it says code to class functions explanations here, right? And then if you do that and you compile, it should say pass, 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 pass. If anyone say failed, then you did something wrong. Right? Copy and paste it, change it. This is easier than the lab that I'm making you do today. Okay? Sound good? That's due by Thursday, right? So it's due on Tuesday. You can do it though. Just make sure you do it. Just because it's easy doesn't mean wait till the last minute. I get it that.
Wait. So privates are not allowed?
Privates are not allowed. Yeah. So let's look at today's lab. I'm going to answer the first 5 questions for you. Right, and then we're going to talk about the rest. All right, let's talk about 1 through 5, which will allow you to get to the next thing. Right? How many public sections are required in a class for the class to be useful?
1.
You need at least 1, right? So 1, right? Because if nothing's public, then you can't use it. How many private segments are required? 0, right? 0 are required. Recommended you have how many? 1, right? 1 of each, 1 public, 1 private. When you define your class, should member variables be public or private? Private, right? Variables should be private, the attributes are private. And when you name a class, should your functions be public or private? Public, right? Functions, right? Your behaviors should be public. Attributes, your variables should be private. Make sense? Right? Question 5, I've given you a class. Right? And all I'm asking is, can you do this code? Like, will this code compile?
Yeah.
Right? Well, some of it will, and some of it won't. Right? 5, 6 questions, right? So, I wrote this code above main, in main, I created 2 cars, right? A Hyundai and a Jaguar. Right? I created 2 doubles as well. The first line of code, I say, your Hyundai.price underscore gets assigned that value. Does that work?
No.
No, because price underscore is what? Private. What about Jaguar.setPrice? Does that work? Yes, because it's under which one? Public, right? It's in the public section. What about a price, which is a double, gets assigned Jaguar.price? Does that work? Yes, right? Price, right? Returns a double. It's in the public section. That double gets assigned into a double. Right? What about Jaguar.profit? No, because it's in what section? Private. What about Hyundai.profit? No, because it's still in what? It doesn't matter what kind of car it is, right? It's private. Can your Hyundai become a Jaguar?
Nope. I mean,
I got some no's and I got some yeses.
It could.
You be traded in, right? So does it work in code? Yes. Why does it work in code? A Jaguar and a Hyundai are both what?
Automobile.
Automobiles. So not only are they both variables, they're variables of the same type, right? Because they're the same type, you can do that, right? Let's think about this. If I created two integers, right? Int x, int y. Can x be assigned to y? Sure, because they're both what? Integers. Whatever I call them. Right? Here, they're both automobiles, right? So as long as they're the same type. Right, we had that in our last class, right? Two shoes of the same type. What are you doing today? You're doing this. You're going to create a class called countertype, although I've done a lot of it for you, so I'll show that to
The
you.
answer sheet only goes to 5.
Please don't write it from scratch. I gave you the 5. It's on camera. Right? The class is used to record a count that is a non-negative whole number. Right? Which means that it is an integer, but it's only what? Well, 0 or greater. Okay? And in this class, you're going to store that count, but then you can do things like increase the count. You can do things like decrease the count. You can do things like set the count, or get the count, or output the count. But because it can never be negative, sometimes when you decrease, you won't actually what? Decrease, right? Because if you're at 0 and you decrease it, should it go to -1?
No.
No, because it can never go lower than 0. All right, in the same way, if you set it, you should never be able to set it with negative values because it can never go that small. Does that make sense? So there are, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions that you need to copy, paste, right? Then start writing. Okay, so let's look at what those functions look like. All right, there it's complete. And here's a not complete. All right. So there's my class. All right. Please ignore line 16. Right? Doesn't look like anything that we've done so far, so just don't do anything with it. Right? Our first function is on line 17 all the way down to line 21. Right? There's 5 functions. You need to copy those and do what with them? Paste them below main. Right? So I need to copy. Right?
Where do you find
that count? It's
Counter type.
for line
on
11.
canvas.
It's on the bottom.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to copy it, and then you're just going to what? Paste it below main. All right, your next step is to do what? Class name, colon, function name, and change the semicolon to what? Curlers. Okay. Now, the set count function is going to what? Set the count. It's a mutator, right? And so if you look at your PDF, it'll kind of help you what set count's supposed to do. But all mutators look the same. They take the parameter, and they store it into the attribute. Take the parameter, store it into the attribute. Problem is, if that parameter is a negative value, you're going to have to make it 0, right? So you need a simple if statement. So you need to flesh out these 5 functions, right? Now, in main, you'll notice that there's a bunch of code that is commented out. Right? When you think you've written it correctly, uncomment the code, all right, and run your program. If you wrote it correctly and it compiles, your output should look something like this. Right? It might not say the current count is, that's in your output function, but you should have the values 5, 6, 5, 500, 0, 0, 1. So you should have that progression of numbers. All right, if you have that progression of numbers, you wrote the class correctly. If you don't have that progression of numbers, then you wrote the class incorrectly. Make sense? And then we can look at what part of it. Yeah, so it's not a question, it's saying that's just what the correct answer is. So I gave you the answers to 1 to 5. You'll upload that as your answer sheet. And then you'll also turn in countertype.cp. Your to answer sheet and the CP one.
Over 1 through 4.
All right, sound good? Can you handle that?
Yeah.
All right, you got 45 minutes to do it. I know you can do it.
Just for these.
You just stop talking.
Yeah, for these.
did work on it on Super and download it and just turn it on.
No, he gave us these answers though.
I have them, Chris.
Oh, you want
It's 1 is at least 1, 2 is 0 are required, 1 is recommended, 3 is private, 4 is public.
the answers?
Yeah. But I have to go.
Shit.
Three was private, and 4 was public.
Public.
So he wants us to do. Didn't he do that all? Or do we have to do one for count?
We have to turn all those into functions.
So we're just working under main, right?
Yeah.
He did all the other stuff.
But then, in the lab, you also have to put in those functions. You have to do what they ask.
Right. How come my thing always fucking resets to 2? Resets to 4. Why did that erase that? Why is it erasing that? Do you have it? Are you getting it? I'm just doing this for right now, just to kind of get everything set up. I think I think I'm doing it right. I don't know. Right? They all need to be of counter type. I'm kind of lost. Part of it was, you know, like when you start writing the keyword that you used already.
Yeah, it starts.
But it was like replacing all my stuff. So if I was to like start counterpunching, I was like, yes, but it was like replacing the word after it. With counterpunch. So.
Yeah, sometimes I'll like, I'm gonna do a bunch, I'll just copy the class name in the colon.
Yeah.
Compiling now.
Well, I don't know. Will it compile if I just did that?
Yeah. So okay. Compile.
So am I on the right track of what you're wanting us to do? Now we need to put stuff in
here. Yeah, exactly. And I just have to say what they do. And all of them will be like anywhere from 1 to like 3 or 4 lines of code. So if you're writing a lot of lines of code, that's what they're doing.
Because I'm just kind of like referring back to what we did here.
Yeah. That's what you did do.
Okay, good.
You done?
I'll just stab it out. Okay, for sec.
Yeah, no kind of around, yeah. So the function for second obviously right? Takes the parameter. Right, use the parameter for count. Right, it stores you don't need parameters there. So what I would do is I would create So this one's called second. both things, right? So it's just that count's going wrong again. Right, and so this one's checking the immediate.
What is it? What can it not be greater than? What was the number?
It has to cannot be less than 0. That was the only parameter.
Like that. So like, it's not gonna be a full range, right? This is the same if it's outside the range of values, right? Here it's a range just less than 0, right? Yeah.
Accessor function to return the current count value named count.
Okay.
What?
The value given the recorder is incorrect. Looking at the one that he did to see where he did what. Oh, okay.
So we don't say case control. Yeah, you can't switch on you switch on the other one. It's got like a care for the player, right? So this is the new, like you use the news as case measure. They have to generate the choice and store the choice rate. No, just yes, I mean comment. So I shouldn't put this in. No, you're an engineer. It's not comment. It's there. Highlight. So that makes me think that your output, which is best count 6. So the rest of them come from your output function. So I'm guessing your output function is fine. But you get your right, there's your output. So here you want to see output. That's output. See output.
Ooh. Oh no. I did something wrong. Millions of lines of errors.
Garbage, right? Change the set count function. So set count, you say, if not count underscore, right, this is the external element, so if count is less than 0, then count underscore 0. What if it's not less than 0? So you notice.
Is that where you could just say return?
In a way. Set count doesn't have a return equally. We're in set count.
What else? What? No, I'm having questions on this too, so I'm trying to eavesdrop. Save you time.
Right. If basically you're saying if it's incorrect data, right, then you're gonna set count underscore 0. But then the question is, what are you gonna set count underscore 0? If it's correct.
So they're all equal to count underscore, right? Or no?
So imagine 500 is coming in, right? So 500 comes in. 500 is not less than 0, but we still want to set the count to be 500. Not see out you're storing. Count you're storing. Well, it's 500 here, but it's negative here, right? And it's 5 here, right? Because it's a variable. Oh, so you said just, yeah. I have 565, 500, 0. And then you call decrease again. So when you decrease,
I have problems.
Decrease below 0. You'll need another. Okay, this is
have to return count underscore.
I've been just returning in every one of these, and I know some of them are wrong.
I have one more time. Yeah. Maybe so you and we can.
Yeah, we do too.
Right, but it's counting for count. Right, except if, right, imagine if it's 0, right? If the count's 0 and you subtract 1 from it, it's going to be -1, right? So you're only going to decrease when it's bigger.
So how would you break that?
Yeah, you would say if what? Where would you do? That's the excessive. That's
Right?
yeah. So decrease would be there, right? But think about it. You only decrease when it's at least 1, right? So if the count currently is 1 or more, then you decrease. Otherwise, you just have to. That will be. Now, before you can do that, right, you're going to decrease when it's available. Right? So if count.
Would we put count underscore or count?
That's one. I have a question. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll try that because I have everything set up. Because I put count and it's like, what?
That means don't decrease. So it's actually better to look at it the other way. When will you decrease? Not less than 0. So yeah. Greater than 0, and then I just that's one.
I think something's gonna happen if I do this.
And you would say count equals count plus 1, but remember we have that plus plus minus minus built in because we add and subtract from 1.
See what happens. Millions of lines of errors.
What? No else.
It says, did you forget the parentheses?
What?
So it's saying invalid use of member function. Did you forget the parentheses at this point?
No, dude.
Mutators.
I don't know what you
Goal is to
I'm gonna ask Luke about that.
Right, you did a 5 because you knew that, right? Somehow we get 5. But really, right, at some point it's going to be 500. At some point it's going to be -10. Remember, these are our arguments. They get passed into our parameters.
Oh, he puts underscores everywhere. Okay, got it.
So count underscore gives us like. And anytime you see a set, you always do that. We always say, take the count, right, the parameter, and store it in the thing. Oh, then if I run that, right, now we get the 5 here, and 5 here, and 5 there. Right here, though, I said the count was -10. We aren't supposed to set it to negative. So then you can say a statement to protect it. I don't know why this one. Maybe this one. So this is
Gonna run this one now.
Right, we know it's an accessor because it's named the same as the accessory variable. And accessors, once again, kind of like mutators, they always do the same thing when they just return what their accessor is. Accessor count is return count underscore. Now you get the 565, 500, right? And now you just need some
Oh my god. 50 pages of errors later.
Then we haven't seen under it, right? Given them the last two.
It doesn't contain
It says an accessor function to return count your accessor.
Oh, okay.
So you just return count underscore. Accessors always return what their access. So return count underscore. And then output, you just see out count underscore.
So I think that this doesn't actually belong here after listening to you.
No. That's not count. Yeah, if count is less than 0, count underscore equals 0.
Because you said set it to 0.
Semicolon. Else. Right, count underscore equals count. Yeah, that's fine. That's great.
Okay. And then I don't need that because that's redundant. Or
Which one? Oh yeah, you don't want to do that because here you'll set it to 0 and then you'll reset it back to like the bad thing. So you don't want that.
Well, I haven't uncommented anything.
Okay,
I'm
wait.
sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. I'm just seeing if it compiles. Right, got little things. Place it. 70.
I'm returning a lot, and I feel like maybe.
So the key thing to remember: count underscores your member variable. So in any function that doesn't have parameters, you're basically only working with your underscore variables. Right, so it's not if count is greater than 1, if count underscore is greater than 1,
Okay.
then count underscore goes. Which you did in some of the other ones, right?
Right.
Alright, there's a void function, so you can't return. And then probably here too, void function. I remember void functions do something, but they don't produce a value, so they don't return anything.
Never return.
Never return on void. There you go.
So I still need to put something in there, right?
Yeah,
Well,
right?
I'm
And it's output,
pointing
right?
wrong.
So its goal is to output the count, right? So if you just see out it, now you've output it, right? You're like, I know how to write it.
Literally?
Yeah, right?
Really?
I told you they're all like 1 to 4 lines of code.
Well, I was trying to stay.
Yeah,
You saw
yeah.
I was trying to, but okay.
So now if you do that, and then if you go to main, get rid of that.
Wasn't that far off?
No, and you get rid of this. It shouldn't do that.
Thank God.
Amen.
Okay. Because I have a client. That's why I was kind of panicking there. Yeah. Thank you.
I got it in the back now.
We changed that, and that's the only place you return. That was sick. I wrote that out. He
Where's
didn't change
where's
that
the
at all.
place you return? Oh, count.
You can't. Here's another way to look at it.
Okay.
Void. You never return anything in void because void's just gonna go do something.
Okay.
You return in something else where you get a value, like int, string, bool.
Yeah, the only place I returned was where the count
Yeah, yeah.
is.
But no, I was just giving you a different way to
Yeah.
answer the question. That way, you have like it sticks.
Yeah. And it looks like.
'Cause I tried to return in void for this output, thinking, oh, that means it'll just return whatever the output was. But he's like, no, you can't. It's void. You have to see out what you get from here, which is what all this did.
Oh, I got mine to work, but now it says -10. Now what's wrong now?
Right.
So can I just add this to the notepad?
Try that again.
Wait, is there also a number 7?
That's just check it.
Okay. Thank God.
Count is 6.
Well, that's a
What?
different.
Oh. And then it should say the current count is 0 and 0, but I'm not getting that. Getting -10 and -10.
Number 5?
Your top one, this is working.
Those ones? It's no, yes, yes. No, no, yes. So it's no, yes, yes.
Well, okay, so you generated it on.
No, yes, yes. No.
Hey Chris, what does your increase and decrease
Yeah, I'll show
objects
you.
look like?
Oh.
That's what he had us do.
Oh, so increase. Oh, an increase. I put an if statement.
Well, so
You know,
so
yeah.
in decrease you need the if statement.
Yeah, because
he
it has
has
to-
conditions that he wants you to do.
Yeah, but then increase. It doesn't have to check if it's less
Yeah,
than
because
0.
it can be. It's just gonna go up.
Yeah. But now I'm having a problem. Now it's giving me some random ass numbers. Because it's supposed these two are supposed to be 0 and that bottom one's supposed to be 1. And now I'm getting -10.
You might have your things backwards. If count is greater than 0.
Yeah, so it'll decrease if it's greater than 0 so that it doesn't get lower than 0.
I have it if it's greater than 1.
Oh.
Let's see if that helps.
No,
Just right click
that
it.
didn't help.
I would still leave that, by the way.
Yeah. So then I got that count right, I got the output right. For the counter
Hold on, let me look at
type,
that.
right, now look at that one.
Do you have your else?
Yeah, I have the else here that sets the count underscore to count.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just have count is, okay, let me try that one. Yeah, there it goes. The only thing I had wrong was right
Yeah, I
there.
saw.
Yeah, that was an underscore, not a regular count.
You were calling on the wrong version of it.
Yeah. So I got
Are
it
you
now.
good too? Yeah? Promise?
Got it.
I could care less. It's not my
I
grade.
could care less.
Got you, bro.
When you use plus plus, use that say.
What was this one? 11, right?
It does this one for you.
There we go. So confusing. I was thinking about it, and I was like, should be like that, but something freaked out.
I just copy pasted it and added it to the bottom of my notepad.
I'm just gonna upload those files separately. It's easier that way.
For increase, but for decrease, your statement, right? If it's greater than 0, then you put that 0.
Later, Chris.
Yeah, two separate things. So right click or
Yeah, bro. Better catch up on homework.
Oh.
Yeah, don't do 2 submissions, do 1 submission per file.
Bye, Felicia's.